Up next, we take a look at the sentiment that seems to be held by a large segment of the sports watching public that the National Football League is rigging games in favor of Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. All right, for our second part today, we wanted to discuss there's a sentiment that, one, it's the NFL playoffs right now, National Football League football playoffs of American football. And there is the Super Bowl matchup has been set. It's Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. There've been playoff games all January coming up to this. And there's a sentiment that's permeating through a lot of the NFL watching public that the NFL is rigging games through the referees in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. And normally, like this type of thing you see from time to time when the Chiefs have been extraordinarily successful. They've won 2 Super Bowls in a row and they've run, 3 overall in the past few years. And they're going for another one right now. And so, when teams have dynastic success, we see this from time to time. But it's interesting the way that this really picks up on the internet, and so I wanted to get your comments and just kind of you as a person who doesn't follow this very much, but I'm sure have seen a lot of this. Like what have you noticed or what stood out to you as far as all these complaints and people being very vocal about NFL being rigged, and not necessarily the players necessarily. To some degree, you hear players complaining, but this is like the people who actually cover the sport that are pushing this narrative, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you said it already. I mean, I'm thinking back to like the New England Patriots 20 years ago. How a lot of people thought that the NFL was rigging things in their favor because they were just that good and they kept winning.
We saw this. We saw this with the Golden State Warriors in basketball, or the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls. They're rigging it for them. They get all the foul calls, things like, or Shaq and Kobe. We've heard the allegations that people got that it was rigged, in those scenarios.
Yeah.
As well.
No, I think, and that's where even going from topic one, the kind of concept of having healthy skepticism versus having some sort of governing body in your mind to say, let me wait till I go to full blown conspiracy. And I think because when I think about healthy skepticism, I'm thinking about, I think it was 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, when that referee in the NBA actually was busted for cheating and went to jail for it. Yeah. So clearly there was enough evidence in a court of law trial with a jury that this guy was cheating as a referee and betting on games. Now that's different.
Well, that's a key point, though. Is like, what was he cheating for? Was he cheating for some overriding league narrative, or was he cheating for his own gambling purposes?
Yeah, that was his own gambling, his own greed. There's been players over the years. I mean, I knew a guy, personally, I knew him that Isaac Burton, that in the 90s was with Steve Headache Smith, part of a big point shaving scandal in Arizona State, their basketball team in the early 90s. So it's like that stuff happens, but to your point, those are people doing it individually for their own self-interest of the gambling, not the league itself rigging an entire team to be in favor and all that. And I tend to think it's kind of like, I think of it like the kind of truther stuff from after 9/11, which admittedly, I tell people I started watching those loose change videos and got into it. I allowed myself to go from healthy skepticism to actually full-blown conspiracy for a while until I got more information that brought me back to the regular skepticism. But the idea is that the reason I compare it to that is that sometimes if something is so big, it's very hard to keep all of the people involved, to keep it a secret. And again, the federal government doesn't seem that good to keep a lot of secrets because a lot of stuff gets out and gets leaked. So if there was some big, vast conspiracy about Bush and Cheney to do all that, something would have gotten out in a certain way. And I just feel like if the leagues themselves were actually rigging these games, because think about it, you got to have then referees on it. Owners probably got to be on it.
Owners own other teams.
Correct. And,
whose teams are getting the short shaft from because of this rigging, so to speak.
Correct. Think about it. And again, in the first part, we talk about these billionaires that own media, right? Those are the same people that own these sports teams. Yeah. Like Steve Ballmer, the founder of Microsoft. I mean, this guy's got so much money as owning tens of millions of shares of Microsoft. I mean, that's my point. It doesn't seem like, what are they going to make an extra couple $1 billion for the entire league by rigging it if ratings go up a little bit? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it seems like a lot of to do for not a huge outcome to rig these things. Then the second thing is think about how competitive these billionaires are with each other. A guy like Mark Cuban, who's more public of an owner of the Dallas Mavericks, the way he was on the sideline, you think he'd be involved if the NBA was like you're saying, yeah, we're going to rig it where the Golden State Warriors are going to win the next 5 years. Yeah. I can see these owners being like, no way, I'm trying to win. Like, I want that accolades. I'm already worth $80 billion as an individual. I don't care about an extra $300 million I might make because we got good ratings. I'm trying to win. I want to go to the country club and everybody's looking at me that I won, so I just think when you really, that's where to me, if you start thinking a little bit out, that's how you can maybe help yourself to maintain healthy skepticism and not go full out.
Well, that's what conspiracy. It is. That's what it is, actually, is that you can't think it out once you kind of get pot committed into this kind of thinking, and you fall victim to your own confirmation bias. And so there are these high leverage games, like the NFL is a winner take all type of thing. Like it's not a series like basketball or baseball or hockey. It's like, hey, this game, this is everything. So everything that happens has a heightened importance. And if you walk in thinking that something is rigged, the way confirmation bias works is that anything that would suggest that the Chiefs got an unfair benefit would stand out in your mind and be like, you wouldn't be able to see anything else. Anything that suggested that when a call goes against the Chiefs, you don't even remember it. It doesn't even register because that doesn't support the belief that you walked in with. So to me, that's what I think that we're seeing here is that the kind of the meme or the kind of the thought process has been repeated so much that people watch these games with the mindset of that the Chiefs are going to get unfair benefits. And so whenever, again, calls go different teams' ways throughout the course of the game, I can point out to where calls went against them and where calls went for them. But the person who's invested in the idea that the game is rigged will only remember the ones where the calls went for them. And so I think that's really what we're seeing here, but we get to see it on such a large scale because there's once this thing becomes something that people pay attention to and people hear over and over again, they become invested in seeing that.
That's a great point, James.
But just real quick, the other piece that you brought up there is that if rigging and this is where again you just don't take the second to think beyond. If any sports league was rigging anything, it's not going to necessarily be to get certain teams involved. It's the gambling thing is what we all got to be worried about. All of the we've seen people rigging things in sports before for a long time. It's all related to the gambling stuff. That's the concern we should all have about any of this stuff. And we've seen people get caught even recently. Like there was a player, for the Toronto Raptors in the NBA who got caught, playing with his over-unders, because, he was getting money and doing this and all that. It's like, that's what we should all be worried about. There's gambling. You can't go 2 steps from any sports right now and see gambling advertisement, gambling this, gambling that. If we're worried about people doing things that are below board, that's where we should be looking. I'm concerned that all this talk about the Kansas City, let's help this middle America town, get into the Super Bowl or do it so because it's like, well, hold up, why wouldn't they do that for Dallas or New York or something like that if they're going to be trying to?
No, James, I get it.
The gambling joint is the one to watch out for.
I just thought about it. You know what it is because it's a DEI play because they have a black quarterback. That's why. So all those libs in the deep state of the federal government are pushing the NFL owners to make sure
all those billionaires in the NFL.
Yeah, they're telling all these billionaires are pushing them around to make sure that the black quarterback gets to shine. That's, you know what? I'm glad that I'm so smart. I think the show's over. But
all problem solved.
But here's the thing too, because as you're talking, so this is fun now. Let's have some fun because I'm just thinking about, bro, because it's about the conspiracy theories like this that don't end up playing out. And people we are in a fire hose of falsehoods moment with all this internet and stuff. And I do think it is a psychological warfare assault on the human mind. And I'm not saying that there's one actor in a smoke-filled room doing this. It's all these companies. It's all this stuff going on at the same time. And
well, honestly, and this isn't let me just. It's not to actually cast aspersions, but it's the capitalistic incentive. The number one commodity right now, it was data, but I'm telling you, it's attention. Your attention is what generates the data, and exactly so maintaining attention, maintaining people's eyeballs is the thing that everybody's playing for right now.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right, because here's where I'm going. So it dawned on me as you're talking. I'm like, we're exactly 1 year away from the last year's Super Bowl. I mean, literally the Super Bowl is next week, right? In early February. So What was it? What was the whole thing last year? It was that Taylor Swift, everybody knew, people that want to believe. Seriously, that's what I mean. It's like funny, but it's not.
I
Taylor
forgot.
Swift,
Yeah,
think
no,
about the
yeah.
conspiracy though. She was going to get proposed to by Travis Kelce on the 50-yard line during halftime.
And so they were going to,
And
that's
then,
right. They were going to rig the Super Bowl.
yeah, they were going to
for
rig the
Chiefs.
Super Bowl
So
for the Chiefs. Then they were going to win. So then they would propose on the 50-yard line. And then for some reason, during all of that, after he won the Super Bowl and they both just got married, got engaged.
They were going to tell people to vote for Joe Biden.
Correct. Then she was going to go do the politics and say, everybody vote for Joe Biden. And remember, that clearly didn't play out. But nobody says, hey, guys, this is just stupid. Why do we keep talking about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. That's what I feel like with this stuff about the rigging thing. Like these things catch fire. And that's what I mean by this assault on our own psyche as humans.
Yeah.
Because it's all BS. It's all a lie. And then what it is,
but it's compelling at the time. Like it's laughable after the time, but it's compelling at the time.
But if you stop and think about it, but if we stop and think about it, like we just did, right? Talking about the NFL. Let's get back to the topic at hand. It's also laughable. Like we're saying about it. Really think about it. Billionaires are going to sit there and say, yeah, I'm gonna go with this other team winning for the next 5 years after I bought this team for $2 billion. I'm trying to make money. And I want the accolade. I want the shine. I want my city where I live and where I own this team to be number one. You know how much money they make when they win championships from every other thing else, like ticket sales, TV, right? This isn't something that the other owners would be, saying, yeah, I agree with the league should do this.
Yeah.
And the owners own the league. That's why they're cartels. They're not. Yeah. I mean, this isn't something where they have this small piece and like Roger Goodell tells them what to do.
They tell Roger Goodell works for them. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. They pay his salary. So that's all I'm saying is if we all slow down, and I think that's the problem with this social media stuff and all that. It's the trigger and response. It doesn't allow people time, and it just it bombards everybody with this BS. And that's why I thought about as you're talking, like. The Taylor Swift thing, as funny as it is, it's a great example because how many people do we know personally that were so invested in that, spent so much time, their emotional state, all that prior to the Super Bowl, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then we could, whether it's the big lie, whether it's, other things that are serious to in our dialogue as a country, you start looking under the surface and it's like there's nothing there, but this just gets pushed around and this information gets enough people ginned up that it slows the rest of stuff down because we got to deal with all this conspiracy theory.
Yeah. So I mean, and like I said, it plays on our, like you said, it's a war on our psyche, but it plays on our biases. I mean, and that's kind of the way these things propagate. And then the other piece about that is that once it doesn't happen or once it's disproven to not be necessarily the case, people just move to the next one. It's not like there's this kind of thing like, man,
there's no reflection
after the fact, like. Well, why was I so sure that this was going to happen? Maybe I should be more skeptical the next time something tries to get me all riled up about something, and it doesn't play out like that, And so it's unfortunate to see, but you see it recycle over and over again, and that's how you know that it's something with our humanity and the way that these things are presented to us in our humanity that it can just get us so riled up. I mean, because people swear to me that it's all rigged, and I'm just like. If you look at it from any number of angles, it doesn't make sense that it would be rigged. But if you just watch the game with the mindset that it is rigged, your confirmation bias will take over and it will show you, your mind will only remember the things that support that case, and it will not remember, it won't even have noticed the things that don't support that case. And you'll walk away convinced as ever each time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, my favorite joke is the Haitians eating pets, because you're right. Like that's memes swirled around enough. A few pictures of black dudes holding ducks, on the street, and next thing you know, no matter what, the governor, the police chief, the mayor of the town, the people in the know are telling people the imprints and the images and all that kind of assault on the mind from the algorithms and the tech world. Made it real enough that this thing was the information became a truth to enough people. And I think to your point, like this information about rigging NFL games is becoming truth to enough people, not necessarily because it's true, but just because it's constantly being pumped in their face. And it's just a good avatar for so many other topics that we discussed
today. To connect it all, though, but I want to connect it because basically when it's pumped into your face like that, and then confirmation bias takes over, that affects your perception, and your perception then becomes your reality. So you get seeded with this information. If it hits you a certain way and you kind of like, I think there's something to this, then you watch with that in your mind. Confirmation bias means that's all you see, and then that becomes your perception, and that becomes your reality. Perception is reality, as we have observed many times from a psychological standpoint. So there is a direct line to anything being presented to you in the right way, particularly if it supports existing biases or beliefs that you have, becoming your reality just based on the repetition of it, seeing it, and then looking at it through the eyes from confirmation bias standpoint. It's a very kind of dangerous place to be, that anything can become true to someone. But this evidence is that, basically.
It's interesting, man, because I know we're going to end this discussion now and keep let everyone go on their day. But I'm just going to say this because it's kind of crazy. Like, if you really extrapolate it out, macro physics right now in this sphere of how our brains interpret information kind of behaves like quantum physics, which I've been reading stuff about, how the scientists are saying that, our neurons might actually communicate through a multiverse. And not to go on a whole tangent, but the idea that observing something changes its state.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the fact that we can observe certain things, it does change the state of our reality. And I think that's one thing that I've been more curious about, which is the idea of information and truth. Information can become a truth, even if it's not factual, if it's put in front of a person enough times. And I think that's one thing we're experiencing just with this internet, and the fact that it's put in front of our hands
in the right way, and that we did Nexus, the book Nexus a few months ago. And that got into how, that common misconception that information and truth were related. Yeah, whereas that they aren't necessarily, they could be, but that's not something that's inherent. And in fact, information has historically wielded more power when it wasn't truthful, when it was in some other way compelling, emotionally. Information can be more powerful than just being true, So, and I think that, this plays into that as well. And, it's just something that we should keep an eye on, because it definitely plays into our human nature in ways that affect how we view things in the world we live in, And so ultimately, I guess this is a small thing of that, but it's something that's of note. It's something that's easy to see and easy to talk about. So I think we can wrap from there. We appreciate.
I'm trying to think of a parting joke in uniting the 2017 Charlottesville propaganda with the Haitians eating pets, but I'm not coming to it. So next show I'll have a joke for you guys.
So that's quite a tease, man. But we appreciate it for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Until next time, I'm James Keys.
I am Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.